part of our responsibility, I guess, as content creators to also put across enough of who we are as people, maybe, so that people know whether we are trustworthy. I don't know, but then some people, they are playing a persona.
How would you describe the work that you do?
See, this is the question that I fear more than any question in life. It usually follows with some kind of like weird noise where I just go, huh, or just like mild panic. But I think I've settled on saying that I am an online creative, because I think that covers so many things. And I don't feel like if I say blogging, it doesn't really cover some of the other work I do. So I feel like it's vague enough that it's accurate and covers every aspect a little bit. I don't know if you want me to go into the different things I do or whether I will bore you senseless.
Yeah, maybe like a brief overview, yeah, just to kind of give people watching an idea of, yeah, the different things, if that's cool.
So I do a blogging and YouTube and content creation via my Instagram. But then I also sometimes work for brands on their advert shoots, so helping in terms of creative direction, sometimes a bit of styling. On one of them, I did even a bit of stop motion camera stuff for them. Then sometimes it's online PR for bands, consultation for brands, videography, photography, and then interviewing as well, obviously, interviewing bands and stuff. So it's very varied, but then you don't want to bore everyone that asks you what you do with an answer that lengthy, because you see their eyes wander a little bit. Wish I'd never asked her. So that's about it.
I know that there's going to be so many people watching this who love every aspect of that and maybe don't really know how to, how you might go to interview for brands at festivals or what have you. So I guess, how did you first get into it? How did you get started on that?
Well, it was many years ago, before like video content was really a thing. I was just interviewing bands for kind of online music sites, and back then you didn't get paid. It's just something you did out of passion and love for music, and you thought, oh, it's great, I get a few free tickets out of this is brilliant. And then it started to happen that you saw more magazines wanting to go a bit more digital and creating more exciting content. So the editor was like, we should start filming them. Are you up for it? So I was like, oh God, okay, I'll give it a go. And then it just kind of, snowballed from there. It wasn't something that I ever thought about doing. I'm a naturally quite shy introvert person, and actually public speaking and being on camera is pretty much my nightmare, if I'm honest. So yeah, it wasn't an obvious path, but I think it almost gets a bit addictive, because when you do something that's quite challenging, that is pushing yourself, and you get through it and you survive it, you get quite, kind of a rush afterwards. So I kind of survived on that rush for a little bit, and it's carried me through till now, but it's still sometimes scary.
No, I totally feel you on that. I've always had like a funny thing with sort of being introverted, but also, ego, and I prefer being at home sort of on my own or with my girlfriend Erin. Then put me on like a stage interviewing people in front of like 200 people. I love it. Like, I don't know why that is, but yeah, I don't know. It's a weird thing. I think that addiction, like you say, is kind of like, it's definitely there. What do you find difficult working with it? You said, you're shy and introverted. What are the difficulties with the work you do?
In terms of the interviewing, I guess it's always worse on the run up. Like, it's the thought of doing things. I worry about whether I'm going to get brain fog, because I've obviously got issues with tiredness and fatigue. Sometimes my mind just goes blank, and I just think, what if that happens when I'm interviewing this really big celebrity today? And you know what, sometimes it does happen. So that's a constant worry. And then you worry about, what if my train is delayed and I don't get there in time, and then I look unprofessional. And then, because I film everything myself, I've never had a budget to have a crew or anything. There's always the tech worry that you're going to play it back and there's no sound, which has happened again a few times for me, and it's just brutal, because you put yourself through so much emotionally to do the interview, and then to not have anything to show for it afterwards is just absolutely gutting. So in terms of the interviews, that's the scary aspect. But in terms of blogging, I think it's the fact that it's there's so many roles within that. I don't have management, so I not only have to liaise with brands, I have to pitch to brands, do negotiating to do with money, which I find excruciating and horrible and awkward, but I'm trying to get better at it. So there's that aspect. And then you're also, I don't have someone to help filming, as I said, so I have to self-film everything I do, take all my pictures myself with a timer, edit all those, write the copy, you know, and then there's the strategy side of it, which I'm not that great on, to be honest. So there's just a lot of roles, and then the 24/7 aspect of it as well. That's difficult, particularly if the people you're around don't necessarily understand that. And maybe sometimes they're like, can you just get off your phone? You're like, actually, this is my working hour and it's quite important. I'm not just scrolling cat videos, although sometimes I am. But, you know, I am trying to like further my career. My hours just aren't as formulaic as yours, but it's hard to get that across because people associate people on phones just, you know, being people on phones, not being efficient and productive and stuff. So that's difficult.
I think when people look at, you know, what could just be an Instagram post or a video or TikTok or whatever, they might just be like, I mean, it's just a 10-second video, but like the amount of preparation, the amount of like filming, you know, and editing and everything, like you know, having done few bits on that kind of side of things, I proper respect that, but I can imagine a lot of people just don't recognize it.
And even like sometimes you'll have a brand saying, I don't have any budget. This happens all the time, actually. I don't have any budget, but would you mind just making a quick video? And it's like, sure, I could do a quick video where I literally just grab my phone and do it, but I'm not someone that's happy to do that. If I make work, I want to make it good and I want to be proud of it. So even though to you it might be half an hour's work, I know it's going to be a few hours for me.
Yeah.
And so then there's that tricky conversation of trying to get them to understand that. Because you don't want to come across as difficult or awkward, but you've also got to get to a point where you get a reward for your time and your efforts. So that's a really tricky aspect, actually.
Going back to what you said about, you know, sort of brain fog and kind of being in those situations, like, I guess, how do you deal with that? And maybe perhaps on like an anxious sort of level, how do you deal with those kind of situations, you know, prior to an interview?
Well, I did actually last year, I started having hypnotherapy just in general to help with confidence levels, being more assertive, because when you start hypnotherapy, it's actually a bit more like counselling. They try and find like the root of where these issues have come from. And she could see that it came from early on in my life, that certain things did impact how assertive I am with people, and that's led to certain situations that I found myself in. After hypnotherapy, I have got to a place where I feel a bit more okay about being assertive and saying how I'm feeling about situations. If I am doing an interview or a panel talk, for instance, I will have a few sessions re-listening to the recordings of my hypnotherapy. So that really helps just calm me down and remember that, you know, everyone's human. If I do have a bit of a brain foggy moment and things go quiet, just, you know, take a deep breath and just, you know, recenter yourself and it will be okay. And actually in interviews, when it has happened, all the bands and the artists have been so lovely about it. No one's gotten angry or been mean about it or like how unprofessional. They've all been, that's fine, happens to everyone. On the most part, I find that just being honest is the key. Like if you say to them before the interview, look, I've had a terrible night's sleep, I might not be as on it as normal, so please don't think it's because I haven't done the research. I have, I'm just not feeling that great today. And I feel like being human with someone like that, it reminds them that we're all in this together, we're all just trying our best. And I think you connect a bit more if you give them that kind of vulnerability and that honesty, because they know you're not there just to be efficient and do a job. You're there as a person just wanting to have a chat. So I think that's helped.
Do you think online work in general and blogging and YouTubing and stuff like that, do you think that is potentially like damaging to people's like their self, their confidence and their mental health?
Definitely. I think there's two ways you can look at it. Obviously, being online connects you to so many people, potentially like-minded people. It can help you feel less alone. It can help you find your tribe, the people that make you feel comfortable. So I think that aspect can be a really positive thing about the internet. And I think for people that are housebound, bedbound, chronic illnesses that do struggle with mental health as a result, it gives them a portal to people that understand what they're going through. They can chat to people in the forums, and I get so many messages from people saying they wouldn't have had their diagnosis if they hadn't been on the internet and connected with people or watched certain videos. So there's definitely positive aspects which I wish people would focus on a bit more than they do. I've found personally that because I've been someone that's a bit of a slow burn, I'm not someone that's blown up on Instagram and got loads of followers. I'm still a micro influencer. That's what they would call me. And I think when you know that you're working perhaps just as hard as other people that have blown up, or perhaps you think your content is okay, you then start to question, okay, why haven't I blown up? Why aren't I as popular? And that process of questioning can take you down a very negative spiral, because you ultimately always go to, it's because I'm too plain looking, I'm not cool enough, my life isn't aspirational enough, all these sorts of things which obviously don't make you feel good to ask yourself. So that has been something that that's where my brain goes a lot. I'm clearly just not very good looking, I'm not very cool, I'm not very talented. That's just what happens. I think it's just your brain either goes there or it doesn't, and my brain does go there. But I'm trying to think of it more like, perhaps it's because I don't play the game well enough. I don't do enough engagement with other accounts. Perhaps I don't do enough hashtags. Perhaps I'm not listening to my audience enough and delivering what they want. Perhaps I'm not working with the right brand. I try and think of it in more of a business mind to get myself off that personal criticism side. So that's a tricky thing. One thing, this is something I've wanted to talk about actually, is that when you work with brands, so you might have a really good partnership with a brand that you've been so excited to get, you feel like it's a really good fit, then suddenly they'll stop it and they'll work with someone else. And usually when that happens, there's no conversation, there's never an explanation why they're not working with you anymore, why they've moved on to someone else. And so again, you go, or did they not like the work? What have I done wrong? Why have they decided to move on? And it might, probably more often than not, is purely because they want to diversify, they want to reach new audiences. They probably had a plan that they'd change up who they work with every year. But when you don't know that, your mind goes to, what have I done wrong? So I think there needs to be more feedback between, say, brands and influencers that would really reduce the anxiety levels and the worries and the confidence wobbles. Because if you knew that they've only moved on to some other influencers because they want to try a different, avenue or a different vibe, or perhaps they're more suited to the campaign, that's absolutely fair enough. And you'd be like, oh, that's great. It's been great working with you. Hopefully we can work again together in the future. But when they don't, there's just too much room to guess. So that's a tricky part of it, I'd say.
Just that lack of communication, I guess. Yeah, that's a good point. Again, a lot of people, I think, would feel that kind of, why haven't I got further, or why isn't this connecting? And it's such a tricky one, because, you don't know how much money, for instance, people are piling into, social media and stuff like that, how, like, what financial backing they've got. And I think that's something that I've felt, but then I think I've always stuck to sort of being micro and very niche, and kind of, I love doing like the panel side of things and connecting with people that way. But I think I've always been quite niche. And I think it's interesting when you get sort of influencers or whatever, doing something that is so broad, like you do everything, or their entire life is the brand sort of thing. And I guess more people have more chance to connect, sort of thing. But I think it's so scary, like, if your work is if you are the brand, because you can't switch off from that.
And I've always thought, I'm so glad that my work isn't based also on what I look like necessarily, because I imagine the pressure of that is just so huge. And obviously anything can happen to the superficial, the vessel, at any point in your life, and we all age. So to know that that's the primary focus perhaps must be very stressful. Like just getting the spot, you'd be like, oh my God. Whereas if you know that your focus is perhaps, you know, mental health, you wouldn't worry so much about that. So it's not easy just to post outfit pictures and pictures of, you know, beauty pictures. I imagine they're stressed about doing that as well. There's just different stresses with different types of content, I think.
Yeah.
But talking about the feedback thing as well, I think that's a tricky thing about being a freelancer. I don't know if you've experienced this, is that when you work in an office, you have appraisals, you have people telling you whether you've done a good job or not. When you're an online creator, particularly one that doesn't have a manager, you don't have anyone going, good job, that was good, or even, you know, maybe you should have done that different. All you have to gauge how well you're doing is either your follower numbers or the feedback. So if you get negative feedback, it's soul destroying, particularly, you know, if you're someone that is smaller, that doesn't get a huge, you know, array of comments. So if you get one and you only get 10 overall, that's like a 10% of I hated what you did. So that's quite tricky to deal with. I think maybe if you're a bigger influencer and you get thousands of messages, it maybe gets lost and diluted a bit more.
Yeah.
You do get the hate, but then maybe you get more hate. So maybe it evens out. But it is tricky when you don't have a boss going, you're going to get a bonus this year because you've done really well. It just doesn't work like that.
Yeah. So much that can affect it as well. Like, you know, there could have been something that got, you know, was dropped on social media and you just got lost completely on the timeline and stuff like that. So yeah, it is really difficult. It must be like, especially working with brands or, you know, where you put so much time and effort into like the editing process or the creative process of just coming up with the idea. I don't think people appreciate it. What would you like people to sort of realize about the work that you do that they might not at the moment?
I think the main thing is how much work we turn down, or how much work I can't speak for everyone. I turn down a lot of work, and that's because I made a decision to only work with cruelty-free brands, which obviously with a business head isn't good because I'm losing thousands of pounds every year. But I know that it wouldn't sit well with me, and I wouldn't be proud of getting that money. It's just a personal thing. Everyone has their own things that they wouldn't do. So I just wish people knew that lots of people, I know lots of influencers who are very strict about who they work with. They want to make sure they are passionate about the product or the brand, that they genuinely love it. They're not just selling anything to their audience. They actually want to be confident that they're promoting things that they believe in, that they think their audience would like. And I think there's this narrative in the media, because they focus on the reality star influencers, that everyone's just selling weight loss products, you know, potentially irresponsible products, I guess. And I think we're all tarnished with that same brush sometimes. And I think if they could see our email inbox and every day the amount of, you know, to and fro's we have where we are chatting to a brand to find out whether we can make this collaboration work, they'd realise that we're not all these money hungry, I'll take anything kind of people. What's also difficult is so many brands want us to break the ASA rules still, even now. I have brands getting in touch daily saying, will you put this on your blog post, but don't disclose that it's a sponsored post. And I just won't do it. It's just not worth my reputation for a few quid. But it's really bad that the brands aren't being put in the spotlight in the same way influencers are in terms of this behavior. It seems like we're always the bad guys, but we're put in these very awkward situations a lot of the time. And if you are struggling for money, you can see why some people do it.
Yeah.
I wish people knew that, I guess. But there's so many things. I think I really want to say to people that, well, while there are flaws and problematic issues in the industry, definitely there's loads. I talk about them quite a lot online. It is a fairly new industry, and that's completely normal. Every new industry would need to be ironed out in some respect and need tweaking and need to evolve to become better. And we've got to give it a chance to get there. We've got to make these mistakes to learn from them. But like any industry, there's good eggs, there's bad eggs. So we're not all the same. We're all very different.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that. going on from that, like what changes would you like to see for influencers and online workers, online creatives?
Diversity is number one, because as much as brands say they are diverse, you can it's very obvious that it's pure tokenism sometimes, that they've listened to the feedback that people are tweeting that they're not diverse, and then they get one person of colour on a press trip, or someone that's of a different size or whatever, and you just think this should be a natural, innate thing you're doing. This should be an authentic thing. It shouldn't be something you actually have to think about. But if you realise that as a brand you are having to think about it, think about the people you have on your team. Do you have people that are in these minorities so they can help guide you on how you should be doing this correctly?
Yeah.
And if not, then you need to make some changes. So that's the first thing, because I'm fed up of seeing press trips where everyone looks the same on the press trip. It's actually bad for business as well. I don't know why they want to continue to target just one group of people when they can be reaching so many new audiences. It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, definitely.
I think the rules as well, much like what's going on with the government as well, they're just a bit confusing, a bit vague at times, and no wonder people are making mistakes. I think it's fair enough to call people up on mistakes if it's all very clear, but it's all a bit confusing whether you have to write ad or ad gifted, or I worked with this brand within the last 12 months and it all gets a bit wordy and not very visually appealing as well. So I think they need to iron out the rules and actually speak to more influencers about what would work, because I think on the most part we want to be transparent. We want to do this right, and we want everyone to trust what we're doing. We just need to work together as a team to get the system working a bit better, I think. It's
such an interesting case study, that whole sort of influencer industry and online creative work and that, because it that authenticity, it has to come from an authentic place in terms of diversity as well. But it's just such a weird notion that for instance, the high profile ones where it's I use this product and it's made such a difference and stuff like that. It's really, have you actually used that? You've not just been sent it and take a picture or whatever. It's hard to that transparency. It's always going to be hard. There's a lot of trust there, and I guess that's just part of the industry.
Part of our responsibility, I guess, as content creators, to also put across enough of who we are as people, maybe, so that people know whether we are trustworthy. I don't know, but then some people, they are playing a persona, so intentionally, because I don't know, it's a complex thing, isn't it? But like you say, that's another tricky thing, because sometimes you get sent a product that you won't know whether it really works well unless you've tried it for 2 months, but they want you to post it next week. So what do you do in that situation? You then have to start a conversation whether you say to the brand, would it be all right if you say something like, I hope this is going to be really good, which they're not probably going to be up for.
That's true. That's a really good point.
That's something I wanted to talk about, actually. You reminded me there. Sometimes you post something and it might not be your finest work, but you can't explain to your audience why that is. And sometimes you'll have a brand approach you saying, oh, someone's dropped out of this campaign. Could you get me a photo and the content in 3 hours? So sometimes you will have really done a fast turnaround on something, had to go out and get props and all this within an hour, send it off to get approved. But you can never explain that to your audience. So then if the post does badly or they don't like it, you can't defend yourself. You can't say, actually the brand were difficult to work with, or the brand changed the brief last minute, or they're actually not paying me that much, so this is the best I could do. You can't ever say those things. And sometimes you're like, oh, I wish I could tell you. Same with interviews, actually. You've probably had it where maybe the band have been very tired, they've just come off the tour bus, or perhaps the interview was pushed back 3 hours and by that point you were just over it. But again, to be professional, you can't say those things.
Definitely.
And you can't defend yourself when a troll goes, oh, that was a crap interview in the YouTube comments. You want to be like, it's not entirely my fault, but
there's so much pressure, isn't it, on just the sense of self and confidence and stuff like that. I mean, before I get on to the last point, like, are there any kind of support networks for sort of online workers and stuff like that? Who, you know, if you say, you know, people who don't have management and, you know, other than the community and social media platforms themselves, is there any kind of, you know, community, well, yeah, support network, I guess?
That's tricky. I think what most do is try and find a tribe within the blogging community that they can have WhatsApp groups with,
Mm.
that you can, you know, bounce ideas off and complain and have a moan if you need to. To be honest, I feel like I'm only just getting that now because I'm out of Surrey. I would often not go to the London events, and I'm slightly on the outskirts of all these kind of cliques and groups and stuff like that. But I've got a few lovely girls now in my life that I do talk to about if I've got some kind of stress about the internet world. But I struggled because my friends, my core group of girls around here, they are not on social media or barely use it, and are not really aware of the pressures of it, how it works, and are also not there to be my cheerleaders when I post stuff online.
Yeah.
And I found that stressful, that I don't have the local girls around me to vent to or to understand or to give me that boost. I found that tricky because they just think of internet and social media as a bit other and a bit like their thing. So that's quite tricky. But I can't think of any kind of communities that I've been part of, like in terms of like platforms or anything that have helped with that. I just seek, you know, online counselling. Sometimes there's BetterHelp, which is an online therapy thing. But I think, you know, some people use blogging to be cathartic and get things out there. I know I've had various moans via my blog or various, you know, brain farts and worries put out my blog posts. So yeah, but maybe that's something that needs to happen.
Yeah, perhaps. Like you say, it's such a new industry. Is there anything you feel like you need to change about the work that you do? Maybe support yourself a little bit more?
I've never wanted to be a big influencer because I know myself well enough that I would not cope with that well. So my target has always been like, I'd love to reach 10K. That's kind of the area, because I know I could make enough money to be okay on that. I don't need to be rich. That's fine for me. But I also know to get there, I still need to play the game to a degree, and I don't always do that. Sometimes it's purely stubbornness because I'm listening to my moral compass a bit too much, maybe. I'm not saying you should just, you know, let go of it completely, but sometimes I'm a little bit rigid on, you know, what I'm willing to do, which kind of halts my progress sometimes, probably. And a lot of people have said actually that it sounds harsh to say it out loud, but a lot of people said that I'm not aspirational and that's why I haven't grown. And I'm quite stubborn about that because I don't want aspirational to be defined as people that are just rich, beautiful, go on loads of holidays. I want it aspirational to also be people that are willing to share their wobbles, their insecurities, the things they're not good at, you know, the things they know they need to work on. But many people who have tried to kind of guide my career along the way has said, you shouldn't say that online. You should stop saying that. Brands aren't going to work with you if you talk about the problems in the industry or things that you don't like about how the industry works and stuff like that. Or if you constantly talk about things that you don't like about yourself. While I understand their point completely, I know, you know, if I was a brand, I'd want to work with that really positive, enthusiastic person, but I'm a Brit, so I'm naturally self-deprecating. Sometimes it's just my humour. I'm not necessarily like, I hate myself. I also don't want to pretend to be something I'm not. And to me, it's very important that people seeing influencers don't think that we've all got our stuff together, that we're all girl bosses, that we're all smashing it every day. While it's good that there are those people out there that give them that aspirational hit, they may think, I want to be just like her, I want to be sassy and sexy and confident like her. I want them to know that there are people that even well into their adulthood still struggle with these things, but they're keeping going and they're working with it and they're trying to improve every day, and that's okay as well. But I know that sadly at times probably has hindered me, but I'm persevering to try and change that. That's something that I would like to change, that, you know, it is okay to say I'm not super confident all the time. And I have some toxic personality traits sometimes.
Mm.
I think the media always kind of focuses on how damaging, edited pictures are and superficial stuff, because it seems unrealistic and unattainable. But we never really talk about how perhaps damaging it can be to pretend that you are this flawless human being that's got the dream life, the dream relationship, the dream career, that's securing amazing brand work all the time. That can be really hard for some people to view when they're not feeling like particularly successful or particularly beautiful or in the best relationship. It can be like, why don't I feel like that? So I just want to be that person that goes, yeah, I'm definitely a work in progress. I've got a long way to go. I didn't make a good decision the other day. Sometimes I don't use kindness as much as I should in my head. I have bad thoughts sometimes, and I think that's okay. I don't know. What do you think? Am I doing it wrong?
No, I think you're completely on the right page. I think because of industry and capitalism and stuff, like that whole like aspirational side of things is probably going to make the most money, I guess. But I think it's far more valuable being someone who is a person that people can relate to and says the things that people need to hear and talk about the things that are, uncomfortable, but that could change or save someone's life. Like to have these conversations and like counseling, like it's good to have counseling, and it really can improve people and help people out. And so like even someone watching this and goes on to be like, what, I'm going to give it a go, and like that makes a difference to me. That's so much more important than someone being filthy rich, having this kind of, I'm sure, like successful and brilliant life, but perhaps not always truly authentic and not always truly transparent about sort of what it is. So I personally think maybe it's coming from sort of being closer to like the micro level, not that I'm sort of an influencer or anything like that, but I personally think having micro influences is more powerful, I think, because you kind of these people who don't necessarily feel represented by these massive brands, like can find these people who can at least they feel supported, and they also have a chance to directly reach out to them and have that relationship rather than this unattainable kind of lifestyle and unattainable people.
And that's a good point, actually, because I was thinking about sometimes you'll post things and there might not be many comments, public comments, but what people never see is how many DMs you get and how many lengthy emails you get. And I get sent letters about really personal things, which isn't good in a business sense, but it shows that you can really connect with people, whatever size you are. And like you say, you might be able to find those messages easier and reply to them and cultivate those really close connections with people all around the world, which you might not be able to do as easily if you have thousands of people messaging every day. So that I actually love that aspect of being smaller, but it's not helpful in a business sense when everyone DMs me, because I'm like, the brands can't see that I'm actually interacting all the time with you guys, so they think someone's interested in what I'm saying. But it's just, no, we've got more to say. We're speaking very personally and privately about stuff.
True. It must be hard to kind of quantify that to brands and stuff like that, but again, like there's nothing better than when you do get a message about something that people have truly like connected to what you're doing, and it's made a difference to even one person. Like I had that for talking about my ex who passed away. She was kind of a influencer sort of thing and took her own life, and that someone reached out literally a few days ago, maybe a week ago, and we're just saying like, my boyfriend died at a young age and stuff. Like watched that and really meant a lot, and what advice would you have? And to me that is like true success. Like to be able to kind of support people in that way, I think is amazing. Like I don't give a shit about obviously getting like 100 grand from a brand would be quite nice, but
quite nice.
But like when it's that kind of level, when that you know what, this might have actually like helped someone out. Like,
and you've got to think when you're older, when you look back on this career, as nice as going to premieres are and getting that freebie is, what's going to stick with you? It's going to be that message you got, and knowing whether you did make a difference, however small, however, you know, small that community was, that you did do something that you truly believed in and that you're passionate about.
yeah.
And I always find that I enjoy doing mental health content the most, or chronic illness content the most, more than anything, because it taps into, I think, really what I want to be doing with my life. And I think, again, it goes back to authenticity, isn't it? If you're true to what you feel like your calling is, or what your purpose is, you're going to enjoy it more, and that's probably going to come across, I think.
Yeah, I think so. This has been so cool. I proper enjoyed this. I think a lot of people will get, you know, a hell of a lot out of this, because maybe I haven't personally sort of seen the content, but I don't know if people talk openly enough about the influence, the kind of industry, perhaps because they don't want to like
others.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's important to do this, and I think you're doing really well with what you're doing. And I think I get, you know, wanting to perhaps be in the same list as some, you know, larger influencers and stuff like that. But I think there's so much more to be said for, you know, for micro influencers. Fair enough, business sense and working with brands, it might make it a little bit more tricky in that, but I don't know. I think it's really important.
I think actually really good PRs are cottoning on to the fact that there is value in micro influence, like you said, the connection side of things. And, you know, I think like brands, if they're looking for good marketing material that they can use, it's not just about numbers either, because they want to look at, are their photos something that we'd want to share on our account? So there's so much room for you to be useful in the industry, with numbers being irrelevant. So that's another thing. Message to smaller people: don't think you haven't got anything to offer, because you have. You've just got to locate what that is.
Thanks so much to Sophie for a brilliant, thoughtful conversation. I really hope you enjoyed our talk. If you're involved in the influencer industry, please leave a comment below with your thoughts. It would be great to hear from you. This interview was filmed prior to the murder of George Floyd and the progress of the Black Lives Matter movement. So much has changed since then. If the interview was recorded now, we would have focused more on the diversity section, and perhaps the answers would have been different. Also, due to conversations born from the Black Lives Matter movement, a blogging union has been created, so soon there will be more support for the creative community. Next week, my guest is TP Highland, director and a visionary creative. We discuss his work directing music videos for the band Ida May. We go in depth on his creative process, working on projects with Amazon Music and more. Support this series by clicking like and subscribe. You can also pitch me ideas for interviews by reaching out on social media. Stay safe, stay connected.